So I wanted to go over a couple of tricks that you can use with VLOOKUP depending on how your data is set up. The first thing I want to do is just go over how you can avoid typing in column numbers with your VLOOKUP. In the examples that we've done so far, we've obviously been dealing with not a huge data set. So this trick is very helpful when you have to bring in like 10 columns from data. So let's say we wanted to bring in department and birthday. So we could type a VLOOKUP here, go for the employee ID, the table range. It's just the same table that we've had before. We'll lock that reference, and then the column is going to be a number 2 and false. And we'll come in here and put a $sign right there too. So we could pull this over, and then we would have to change these columns manually. So department is column 4, and then this is column 3, and we'll format this as a date. But like I said, if you had 10 columns, going into each one of these formulas and manually changing the column index number can be a bit tedious. So one thing you can do is use a helper row to put the column index number. So I've just added this blank row here above my table, and I'm going to type the column index that you would have for each item. So employee name is a 2, department is a 4, and birthday is a 3, like we saw before. So now when we come into our VLOOKUP, instead of typing that 2, we can delete that and just reference a cell. Because we want to always have this cell stay in that first row, we need to put a $sign in front of the 1, but we wouldn't put a $sign in front of the D because as we pull this formula over, we want it to change to E and F as well. If we hit enter, it still returns Andre Holt. And then if we pull this formula over, it's going to return executive and the birthday. And of course, we have to change the formatting still. So now I only had to create my VLOOKUP once, and then I could pull it over without any problems. You can double click all of those, and now it's populated as well. Another advantage to this method, like we've talked about, if you added something to your data set, and now department is all of a sudden column 5, we can come back here, department's showing zeros, so we can just type a 5 once, and now all of our departments are looking better again. Another thing you might run into is if there isn't a unique identifier in your data. So in all the examples that we've done so far, we've had this handy employee ID, which is a unique identifier for our employee. Let's say though that you just had a list of first name, last name, a date, and bonus payment, but you wanted to get department in here so you could summarize by department. Instead of using our traditional employee data, let's also say our data was split up a little bit so that we had an ID column, a first name, a last name, a birthday, and department. You'll also notice in yellow, I've added this Joe Thompson up here. The reason that this is important is we have 2 Joes in our data set and 2 Thompsons in our data set. So we can't just use the first or last name because that's not a unique value. If we did a VLOOKUP just on the first name, anytime we would want Joe Boyle to show up, it would return whatever Joe Thompson has in his row. So coming back here, we have to create a unique value in our data set. The easiest way that I've found to do that is just to add a column. So we'll come over here and just add a column by pressing Ctrl+Shift+. And now we can create we'll call it first and last. And we'll use this as our unique identifier. So to populate it, we'll just use a simple concatenate function, or concat. That is the newer version of concatenate. This just combines text from cells. So we'll select Joe, press a comma, and then we want a space between our first and last name. So we'll type quote space quote, type another comma, and then select the last name. Now we have Joe Thompson, and if we pull that down, we now have a unique identifier in our data, this first and last name column. We can then use this as our lookup array in our VLOOKUP. So coming back to this tab right here, we'll type equals VLOOKUP, and the lookup value is going to be that first and last name. Now you could add a column in this data that does the first and last name as well, or you can just type it in the formula itself. So Andre, comma, quote, space quote, and then last name. So we've put this formula within our VLOOKUP. The table array, we're going to come to this employee data split tab. First and last has to be that first column, and then we'll come here and select all of those columns and hit F4, and department is going to be our 6th column over. So we'll type comma and 6, and then make sure it's an exact match. And then we can just pull that down. So again, depending on how your data is set up and how your source data is set up, you might need to get a little creative with how to find a lookup value and maybe even creating a lookup array.